Hi folks. In this video I'm going to talk about my top 5 middle grade reads of 2024. I read 15 middle grade books last year, so from 5 to 1, here are the ones that I thought were the best. At number 5 we have Marianne Dreams by Catherine Storr, written in 1958. If you've never heard of this book, it's possible you've seen the movie adaptation, which was called Paper House. There is also a television adaptation, a British television adaptation in black and white, called Escape into Night. I think it's a little 6-part thing. I had started to watch that with a friend. We were both sort of vibing with the whole hauntology, haunted generation thing, if you've ever heard of that. And we were checking out old TV shows from the 70s that were like children's TV shows but edgy, because books and TV shows in the past for children tended to be a bit more grown up than they are these days, unfortunately. Unfortunately for these days, I prefer the more grown up type fiction for kids. But Marianne Dreams, I had started watching Escape into Night, and we were both looking at each other, me and my friend, and we said, I think I've seen this before. And then we realised it's Paper House. And it says at the start of the TV show, based on the novel Marianne Dreams by Catherine Storr. So I decided to stop watching it after one episode and check out the book, and it was definitely worth reading. So it's about a girl who is stuck in bed. She has some kind of leg injury and she can't get up for the next maybe 2 months or something like that. So she occupies part of her time sketching things in her little sketchbook. So she starts drawing a house, and she puts a little boy in the window, and then when she falls asleep, she ends up at that house in her dream. She meets this boy. So she wakes up again, and then she adds some more details to the drawing, and when she falls asleep again, she enters the same dream. And she learns that the boy is a real boy. She knows his name in the dream, but she learns that her tutor, who comes to see her every day, is also tutoring this very boy. And they seem to be having a shared dream experience with each other. And she tries to help him by adding things to the dream. And sometimes she adds things to the dream that backfire on her spectacularly. So that puts you in the picture of Marianne Dreams. The TV show and the movie are all worth checking out, but I wouldn't spoil them first. I would read the novel first if that interests you. In number 4 is The Witchcraft of Salem Village by Shirley Jackson, written in 1956. So this is actually a non-fiction book, but it is marketed as a book for children, and it teaches children all about what happened historically with the Salem witch trials way back centuries ago. And it certainly was fascinating reading. I think Shirley Jackson appears to be using a lot of material that was available to her to construct the narrative of what happens. It is written in a kind of a factual way. It's not written like she's creating a kind of make-believe narrative. She's just telling the facts as she knows them. So the Salem witch trials, it's essentially, the young girls, it was believed by the people of the time, had some kind of supernatural ability to identify witches. They would fall into fits around people they believed to be witches, and a rather naive adult population took this seriously and ended up putting to death some people who were innocent. And to the girls, this was a case of too much power in tiny hands being wielded very, very recklessly. But I do think it's good for kids to read something like this, to put them in a position of understanding about having too much power at a young age, and also about just the misuse of religion, and how people can be really quite backward in their thinking sometimes. Yeah, so Shirley Jackson, you know the name. She's famous for a number of books, particularly The Haunting of Hill House. So this is one that's well worth finding by Shirley Jackson, whether you're an adult or a child. In the number 3 slot is No Such Thing as Dragons by Philip Reeve, written in 2009. Philip Reeve is most famous for his Mortal Engines books, but I had never read him before this other than a couple of short stories. So this was a find in a charity shop and I picked it up. I have a physical copy of it here to show you. There we go. No Such Thing as Dragons by Philip Reeve. A nice little hardcover here with, I'll just try and show you one of the illustrations. Yeah, each chapter it's got a nice little illustration with it. Yeah. See if I can find another one. Yeah. So this is a story set in medieval times about a man who travels around making money by slaying dragons. Dragons that only exist in his mind and in the beliefs of the people around him. He doesn't believe there is such a thing as dragons. And he has a kind of helper with him who's a young boy that he buys from someone. Yeah, back in those days you could buy people, or a father could sell a son apparently. So this little apprentice travels around with this man, but as chance would have it, they end up realizing that dragons may not be so fictional after all. So that's No Such Thing as Dragons. Very good story. And in number 2 slot, I've also got a physical copy of this. It's The Clockwork Crow by Catherine Fisher. This was just a really nice, quaint sort of tale set in Victorian England. I should say Victorian Wales. It starts off with a young girl who's an orphan, recently orphaned, travelling by train to Wales, where she's going to stay with her new family. Everything's going to change for her. But the story really starts in a train station on the way, where a stranger comes up and gives her a package and says, "Keep this for me until I return. Whatever you do, don't leave it here." And he disappears, but he doesn't come back, and her train arrives and she has to get on it, so she doesn't know what to do with this package. So she takes it with her, and when she gets where she's going, which is this secluded manor house in Wales where everything's a bit strange with this family. But anyway, she's got this package, so she opens it, and inside it are all these parts. She puts them together and ends up with a clockwork crow. There's a message in with the package that says, "Do not assemble," but she assembles it. And this crow, as you might expect, has some sort of magical properties. And there's something going on at this house. There's a mystery to solve. So that was a really fun, quaint adventure to sort of curl up with in bed at night for about 4 or 5 nights while I read it. Intended for kids, but perfectly readable by adults if you're the type of person who likes to sort of regress yourself back into that more comfortable sort of literature that you might have read as a child. My number 1 book is, where is it? I can hardly see. My number 1 middle grade book of last year is Escape Room by Christopher Edge. Really good. So, an escape room. Do you remember the TV series The Crystal Maze? You might remember that if you're from the UK. So it's one of those game shows where there's a room and there are puzzles to solve and traps to avoid. And by solving the puzzles, you will get out of the room to the next room. So there's a bunch of kids are doing one of these escape room things. When it all starts to go wrong and things start to blow up and they seem to be trapped now, but they have to move on to the next room. But everything's getting really, really dangerous and their lives are very much in danger. So it sounds a bit pedestrian, like what's so interesting about that? But the thing that catapulted this to the number 1 spot is the ending. I did not see how this was going to end until it happened. And so many endings of books are just kind of humdrum, or you just saw it coming. This one just totally surprised me. And Christopher Edge is now well and truly on my radar. And in fact, I'm reading another one of his books at the moment. One of his earlier works. This is a very recent one for him, but I will be looking out for this author's books from there on in. So that is my top 5 middle grade books of 2024. See you later.